In this video, I'm going to go over how to bring your rendered images of the skull from the front and side into Photoshop and register them. That is, to scale them so they're exactly the same size. So you don't need Maya for this. Just navigate to where you save those rendered files. I saved mine into a slightly different place than yours, but they should be inside your project, inside the renders folder. And then just select both of them by selecting one, then shift selecting the other, and drag them down onto the Photoshop icon in your dock. There they are. Now what we want to do is create a new file, bring these two images into it, and then scale them up or down so the top of the skull in the front view exactly lines to the top of the skull in the side view, the lowest point on the chin lines up, and all the intervening pieces of anatomy are all lined up. And because we rendered out with these little cubes that are exactly 1 centimeter in size, we can use that to make sure we're scaling these things to exactly the same size. So the first thing we need to do is create a new file. So in Photoshop, go to File, New. You can go to the presets here for US paper. The size should be letter. And then the color mode here should be RGB color. Okay? That may not default to that, so make sure that's the way it is. You see it's 8.5 by 11 inches and a high resolution 300. Say OK. So what we want to do is drag these images into here and then line them up. So we're dragging them onto separate layers. So let's go to the side view first. If you go to your window menu and then go down, make sure channels is turned on, and you should see a box like this somewhere. The alpha channel is defines the outline of the picture here, and we don't want to move all this white area over. We just want to move the colored skull and this part. So if you hover your mouse over the alpha 1 image here, it's just this black and white representation of the skull, and if you hold down Command and click on it, let me do that again, hold down Command, click, you can see that the skull is selected. It's kind of hard to see, but there's a little selection border going around it. Then you want to make sure you go to this selection tool in Photoshop, and then just when you hover over the picture, you see a little pair of scissors appears over top of your image. Then just click and drag onto that new file that we created. And you can hold down Shift and we'll lock it to the middle of the page. Okay, so there it is. I'm going to close this one. And if we go to the new file, if you have your layers palette open, if it's not, you can go to Window, Layers. And it should be clicked on. Mine's right here. You can see that I've got a layer with the skull on it and just a background layer. Now we'll do the same thing for this skull image. Go to the channels box, Command, click, and then from the rendered image onto the new file, click, drag, holding down Shift and then let go. You can see it's created a new layer. Let's name these layers appropriately. Let's call this one front, this one side, see a little more clearly here. And close this image now. So here we have our two images. They're separate on different layers, so we can turn one off and the other one off so we can see them separately. But we want to line these things up. So the first thing we need to do is to set our units in the ruler here. The rulers are just measurements along the side of the document. You can see it's 8.5 by 11 inches. If yours aren't turned on, then you can just click on Command R to toggle them on and off. So that's Command R. Toggle them on and off. But we don't want to measure this in inches right now. We need to change this to centimeters so we can make sure that each one of these blocks is actually exactly 1 centimeter, and we'll get a 1:1 scale image of this skull. So to do that, we have to go into the Photoshop Preferences, go down here to units and rulers, and just make sure units, rulers is changed to centimeters. And so now you'll see that we're in centimeters. So let's just deal with the side view. So I'm just turning on the visibility on the front skull. And we have to make a guide for us to scale this skull up. So if you click in the top ruler and drag down with the left mouse button, you can create what's called a guide. And I'm just dragging it right to one of these units. So I'm dragging it down to 20 centimeters. Then I'm going to grab another one and drag it down, but this time to 19 centimeters. So we just have two lines that indicate what 1 centimeter is really in this document. And then we want to scale this skull up and this little cube up at the same time, so the cube matches this dimension, and then we know we have a 1-to-1 skull. So to do that, make sure you've got this layer selected so it's blue like this, and then go to Image, Edit, Free Transform, or you can just hit Command T. And so you can see you get this bounding box around your image, and you can just select one of these corners. Now start clicking and dragging, but then hold down Shift. That makes sure it will stay uniformly scaled. It won't get stretched or squished. Then drag this down so you can see I'm making it so this little box is trying to fit exactly between these two lines. So click, drag, holding down Shift. It's still a little bit too small. Click, drag, holding down Shift. That looks about right. We can zoom in with the navigator if we need to get in closer. That's pretty good. It's actually a little bit too small. So I'll just click, drag, holding down Shift, and let go. That's better. And you can just, when you're finished, hit this little check mark or hit return. So now we have to do the same thing with the front side. So turn that up, turn that one on, turn the side off, make sure this one is selected, hit Command T, click and drag with Shift held down. So I'm clicking and dragging, then holding down Shift. Well, that's pretty close right away. So I'm going to try and center it. Excuse me. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. It's actually a little too big. Still a little too big. Click, drag, hold down Shift. So when I click and drag inwards, it's making it smaller. When I click and drag outwards, it's making it bigger. There, that's good. Hit return. Now we can turn on both, and they should be the same size. Now let's just turn off the side again, and let's make two more guides. Let's center. Let's use this as our guide. Zoom in a little bit. So get the front view placed the way we want it. Click and drag down a guide from the ruler again, right at the top of the skull. Click and drag another one down as the lowest point at menton, at the tip, the lowest point of the mandible. And then just turn on the side view and make sure they line up, which they don't. If they don't line up, I can just do that transform thing again, Apple T. And I think I just had this one a little too small, but the squares look about the same size now. Yep, that looks good. So the top of this skull should match up with the top of this one. The chin should match up with the chin down here. And you want to get it pretty centered so you're not going too far to the edge, because when you print it up, you want to make sure nothing gets cut off. So that's great. We've got these lined up, and now we just have to save these out separately. So let's turn off the visibility on the side view. And well, first thing we want to do is save this file. So let's go Save As and navigate to where you want to go, back to that renders folder, and I'll call this Derm Recon Registered. You can name it whatever you want, but then change it to format, Photoshop format. and you'll get a PSD file. That means it can save out those different layers too. Say OK. And now let's save out these separately. So we've got the front turned on, side turned off. Let's do save as. And let's call this Durham Recon Reg Front. And we can save this as a JPEG. Let's say save, and you'll get this option. Make sure it's at maximum quality. Say OK. Then turn off the front, turn on the side, do the same thing. Save as. I just hit Command Shift S for a shortcut to save as. And just change the name to side. Make sure you change the format to JPEG down here. Save, same thing. Done. Now we can close this and save that. And now let's just open up those two ones that we just created in Photoshop. So these are the two JPEGs, same images as before, but now they've just been registered to match. And if you don't want to see these rulers or these guides anymore, you can just turn off R for rulers, and if you hit Command R for rulers, Command semicolon for guides if you don't want to see those. And then the next thing to do is just to print these up to a color printer, and then we're going to trace them. So when you go to print, if I go to print here for this one, you can see that it's a little too big for 8.5 by 11. So you can say scale to fit media, and it'll shrink it down a little bit. So it won't be quite 1-to-1 anymore. But if you do this for both of the images, they should match up exactly. And then just hit print. And I suggest you do this on a color printer because this will allow you to see these red tissue depth markers much more easily against the gray background. You may have to try a couple of prints. You may want to try lightening it up a little bit to make it a little more visible. But then the next step after this is to take these prints, put some tracing paper over them, and start working on pre-visualizing what the face is going to look, what it's going to look like, and doing that by hand. Okay, good luck.